All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, Elizabeth Warren's Medicare for All plan, it is a complete mess. And the best part of this, it doesn't matter which way you approach it from. The only thing that remains clear about it is that she was really never serious about this proposal in the first place, and she refuses to submit to the obvious truth that people across the income spectrum are going to have to pay more to the government in order to accomplish a Medicare for All system. Now, whether the costs themselves actually go down is another question entirely I'm not going to touch here. But let's start with the plan itself. It proposes raising $20.5 trillion in new federal spending to pay for Medicare for All by allocating existing insurance costs spent by employers, doubling her tax on billionaires, going after financial transactions, and even counting additional tax revenue from a supposed immigration reform plan. Each one of these pay-fors would be an extraordinary achievement in American politics, and she wants to do all of them through the United States Congress to pay for this plan. Oh yeah, she also wants to cut defense spending too. All right, all of these proposals were put forward simply to worm her way around saying, yes, middle-class taxes will go up on the debate stage. Funnily enough, it actually continues to validate the idea that this entire plan is mostly a vanity exercise for her to check the box on her I have a plan for that candidacy without satisfying much of the progressive left's distrust that she is seriously committed to this healthcare plan. Matt Bruenig of the People's Policy Project wrote in the notoriously right-wing rag Jacobin magazine that Warren's Medicare for All plan is, quote, a disaster. Bruenig characterizes Warren's business insurance tax in particular as a Medicare head tax because it requires a fixed dollar amount per worker to be paid to the federal government. This is far less efficient than a Medicare payroll tax, which is of course factored on a percentage that a worker earns. Bruenig notes, literally the only reason to do this is to trick journalists into saying that this isn't exactly a tax and therefore does not impact middle-class workers, which of course it does. As several astute political observers have noted, she might as well have said she's going to get Mexico to pay for Medicare for All. She even went so far as to tell journalists yesterday that her plan would not raise taxes on anybody worth over $1 billion. Let's take a listen.
Here it's 100%. It doesn't raise taxes on anybody but billionaires. And you know what? The billionaires can afford it, and I don't call them middle class. So billionaire, that's where it worked.
Anyone under $1 billion, that worth.
That's right. It's not paying a penny more. That's exactly right.
This is completely false. Not only does employer tax alone render this BS, but it doesn't include her financial transaction tax or her capital gains tax increase. This would all affect people worth less than $1 billion. Warren's entire plan is designed not as a serious policy proposal, but as an electoral conceit, which is designed to placate at worst and steal at best people on the progressive left who do not trust her proposal. This became eminently clear on Sunday when Warren responded to Senator Bernie Sanders' accusation that his plan is more progressive and more straightforwardly paid for than hers when she said, quote, Bernie may have a different vision for how to pay for it, but let's be really clear. Bernie and I are headed in exactly the same direction. As journalist Zed Jelani points out, Warren is trying to use Sanders as a political shield against his very own accusation. All of this is for a very basic reason. Morning Consult polling indicates Bernie Sanders overwhelmingly leads amongst Democratic voters when it comes to trust as to who best understands the American healthcare system and who they can most trust to fix it. Warren places third behind Joe Biden in both categories, largely because of her equivocation on healthcare in the past. So why do I even care about this? I'm not even for Medicare for All. Well, because it's a sophisticated effort to dupe professional journalists and voters into believing Elizabeth Warren is fundamentally serious about an issue area that she is clearly gaslighting the American public on. It goes to the heart of what I believe is a central flaw as a candidate. You simply cannot trust what she is going to do. If you don't care about healthcare and you believe that restructuring the financial system is the best way to fix the American economy and the system of government, then you should just say that. You don't have to pretend that you're an all-encompassing serious person, especially when there is already a healthcare corollary in the race. But she can't do that because healthcare is a #1 issue for Democratic voters, and her theory of the case just simply isn't correct. And that's the thing, Crystal. Look, it's like I said, I went through and I cited all these progressive economists who are like, there's only one way to pay for this, and it's called a Medicare payroll tax. And the only reason not to do a Medicare payroll tax is to avoid saying the words, yes, taxes on the middle class will go up. Why should we trust you to implement this? You're trying to put forward an inefficient and ridiculous pay-for scheme just to get around political inconvenience. That doesn't satisfy trust on whether you're actually going to do something.
Well, and also, if you're someone, which I think this is very legitimate because Elizabeth Warren is fairly new to supporting single-payer health care, if you're someone who doubts that this is a top priority for her, the fact that one of the pay-fors necessitates passing immigration reform is making him get to
I saw that. I was like,
healthcare.
dead. It's never gonna happen.
I mean, look, it signals that, this isn't your top priority. To me, this is the policy equivalent of having gotten baited into taking a DNA test to satisfy the whole Pocahontas thing. And so, look, she gets attacked on it. She can't take it. She takes this DNA test, and it makes everything worse. And this is like the same thing. She's getting attacked for not being willing to say the middle class taxes will go up and not having a plan. And so then she creates this mishmash thing that really honestly just makes everything worse. If you want to get into the details of this, and Matt Bruning really wrote the best piece on it, essentially the way that she has it structured will discourage employment and will force employers, it won't force them to, but this is what they'll do. They'll push more and more people into contractor status, which just denies them all sorts of benefits and rights. And, it's already a trend that's happening. This would just exacerbate that. But bottom line is here, she just employed a mishmash of gimmicks to keep from having to admit that, taxes will go up even as costs will go down. Bernie has handled this much, much better by just saying, look, people's costs will go down. And that's why he's more trusted on the issues, because he's been more direct.
Exactly, which is that voters are willing to listen to you if you're like, listen, this is what's going to happen in exchange for this policy promise. People can at least have a valid debate in their mind, right? Like, okay, am I willing to pay more on this? If Bernie says, then it comes down to trust of the politician and the implementation. On this one, not only can you not trust the pay for, you can't even trust the policy.
Right.
So it's on both ends of the political spectrum. And, Bruning said it best, which is there's a reason nobody pays for health care anywhere through this strategy. They don't do it because it's not efficient and it's easily avoidable if you're an employer.
I also thought her response to Bernie was very telling, where she's just like, we're the same. We're the same. And that's been not only her strategy, but her supporter strategy to say, let's just have a love fest. Let's not point out any of the differences, because if they're the same, then of course you're going to vote for the woman who's younger.
And I got to say, Bernie's playing right into her hands. These weak attacks about, mine is more progressive, they ain't going to cut it, man. That's not.
You know what? On this particular thing, I don't think he has to say much, though. I think it's pretty clear.
All right.
So my radar will be next, right after the break.